Hey all, and welcome back to Radical Slice. My name is Eric. You are joining me on my journey to implement something a little bit like Kung Fu on the NES. We're getting pretty far into things now. On this installment, I'm going to be adding a little level marquee, an animated level marquee, and we're going to talk a little bit about animation and easing, which are topics that are unfamiliar to me. So I'm just going to show you the functions I use, and we're also going to work a little bit on the more technical side. We'll talk a little bit about how we sort of structure the game and function pointers and timers and that sort of thing. So sit back, relax, and let's do some easing. So one of the things that's sort of been on my wish list of I don't know, polish that I want to do is to have some sort of brief intro of each level. So, and I'm thinking keeping this pretty simple. It'd be nice to have, like, you know, the guy walk in from the side of the screen or something, but at least initially, kind of all I want to do is just print like level 1 or level 2 on the screen. But that by itself is a little bit boring. So what I'm thinking is start with like some sort of, like a marquee. Maybe it'll be black, I don't know. And then, oh mercy. And then just have the text, you know, level 1 or whatever. We'll be real mathematical. We'll do level N, and it'll not just like appear on the screen, but I want it to slide in, right? Okay, so sliding in is like a little bit more interesting, and then slide out again after it'll like slide in, stop for a moment, and then slide back out. Stop. Now I'm just having fun annotating this thing. Anyway, but in order to make this a little bit more interesting, still more, I don't want to just have it move at like a linear speed and stop and then go out again. I want the speed to sort of like decrease as it gets towards the center, stop, and then accelerate on the way out, right? So it's sort of like decelerate, stop, accelerate again. And I think based on some very casual Googling, that what I need here is probably an easing function. Now keep in mind I have zero animation experience, but that seems to be the thing to do in a situation like mine. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can code that, and I have no idea if it's gonna work, but I think I can get something. And so once I've got something worth talking about, I will explain myself to you. So in the meantime, enjoy watching me try to get this thing to work. Quick progress update. It does this now. Hi, oh god. Let's watch that one more time. Hi, oh god. Okay, so I mean that's something, but not exactly what I'm going for. I'm gonna keep plugging away. I just wanted to share that moment of joy and failure with you. So let me show you what I've got. First we'll have it kind of slide in from the left and kind of slide to a halt. So that looks pretty good. Watch that one more time. Nice, nice. Yeah, this is being done by this ease out quadratic function, and I'll explain that. Well, I'll talk about that briefly. The other half, though, is getting it to move to the right side of the screen, to leave. So I had to split them into separate parts. So that's how it leaves. So we got it to, oh, and that's weird. We got it to show up, and we got it to leave, mostly, although it comes back for some reason. Yeah, not bad. Oh, I know why that is. Okay. Do this. Okay, that's better. So let me kind of show you what's going on here in the code, at least as best as I can. I'm not going to pretend to understand the math quite yet, but let me just explain what I'm doing. I have this easeOut quad function. I give it the current time, which is how long the game's been running right now, because we're playing it right at the beginning. The initial X position of the text, the final position that I want, and then how long I want the animation to take, which is 1.5 seconds. So in this case, we're going to gradually decelerate as we move from 0 to 74, which is roughly the middle of the screen. We're gonna get there in 1.5 seconds. That was for moving from left to right. Yeah, to like move the text into the screen. It's left to right in both cases. So for it to move from the center of the screen out, the second thing I showed you, that's an ease in function. And we're going to move from the final position, which was, in this case, 74, kind of. I'll explain in a minute. From 74 to 160, which is way the heck off the screen. And that'll also take 1.5 seconds. You'll notice here in the actual print statement, so I'm basically keeping the y value the same. And I'm taking the result of the easing functions as the x coordinate of the text. And I'm offsetting it by 20. The reason that I did that is because I wanted, when the text enters the screen from the left edge, I wanted to begin life off of the screen, right? I didn't want it to start at coordinate 0, because if it starts at 0, it's already on the screen when you start the game. That's lame. I want it to show up from the left-hand side. In order to do that, I wanted to initialize rather, at minus 20 at some negative value in any case. But when I plug negative values into these easing functions, like bad things happen. Weird things happen. So I just set it to 0. And I actually want the text to stop at 54, not 74. But because I want it to begin 20 pixels to the left, I just shifted the whole thing, right? So these functions, I'll put a link to these in the description, or a link to where I got these rather. But there's a site called Spicy Yogurt, which had, there's a link for you, had a bunch of these easing functions in JavaScript. And not only is JavaScript very similar to Lua in a lot of ways, but I also know JavaScript, so I was like, ooh, nice, a familiar friend. So I just took these two functions, adapted them slightly for my purposes, and plugged them right in. Yeah, some adaptations I made was I just added like a clause at the beginning to return the max value when the animation reaches its maximum time. In any case, yeah, I'm passing in the time is the first argument here, which is the current time, the starting value, the delta between the start and the end, which would be, in our case, the ending X position, and then the duration of the animation, how much time we want it to take. And that's it. We got the ease in and ease out. Now, as I pointed out at the beginning, they are not put together yet. So what I'm going to have to find a way to do is connect our ease out function, that initial deceleration, a brief pause where the level text is displayed on screen without moving, and then transitioning that into the easing in, or the accelerating off of the screen. I have a rough idea of how I want to do that, so let me take a stab at it.
Bye.
Let me show you what I've got so far, because I think it looks pretty good. So when we start, we should see the level text appear from the left, stop for a moment, and then slide to the right. And I also had the marquee sort of disappear or slide out of view as the text is exiting the screen. It's like this. Hey, pretty good. Let's see that one more time. All right, yeah, cool. Of course, it also, I set it up so it also works if the player dies. Same thing. I don't know if I want to have it every time, but for now, I wanted the most complete version of the implementation that I could get. And of course, it'll work if we go to level 2 as well. So I can show you the code, but it might be easier actually if I draw some diagrams, if y'all are cool with a diagram right about now. Let's go to do a diagram. So I've talked about this before, but maybe haven't spent enough time going into it sort of conceptually. So Pico-8's got a couple of functions called update and draw that are called every frame. But we've sort of like we've adjusted that slightly. So hold on a sec. Essentially what I did is we created 2 function pointers, or function aliases, I guess, if you want to call it that. One's called update with 2 underscores, and one's called draw, also with 2 underscores. And so then we have like some functions called like, we'll just say like, I think it's called game. We'll call it game U. And we'll put a little cool little F here for function. And we've also got a draw function. We'll call it game D. We'll mark that as a function. All right, so these guys every second update and, or I'm sorry, not every second, Jesus, every frame update and draw are getting called. And most of the time, we're going to want to point these to game update and game draw. But let's say we wanted to have some other logic. Let's say that we didn't, like for a title screen, right? In game update, we're like doing a whole bunch of stuff, like we're reading input, updating baddies, updating bads, process timers, etc., etc., etc. We're doing like a whole bunch of stuff to actually make the game go. But there may be a state of the game that we don't want to do all this stuff in. Right? Like maybe we just want to process timers and do nothing else. Maybe we don't want to read any input from the player, like on a game over screen or on a title screen or something like that. And in those cases, like we don't want to do this nonsense. We don't have any baddies, so we don't want to do the update baddie logic. Maybe we want to keep the timers though. So we can handle that by just creating another update function and changing where we point update. So hold on a sec. So let's say let's do the title screen, because I think that's the easiest example to consider. Let's say we had a function that was just called title update. Call it title U, and again, it's a function. So remember, the way we sort of set it up, Pico-8 is going to call whatever we assign to update and whatever we assign to draw every single frame. All right, it's not strictly the case in the default implementation of Pico-8, but that's kind of how we set it up. And so if we don't want to do game logic, if we don't want to check the player input or anything, instead of pointing update to game update, we'll just point it over here to title update. That's totally not the same color arrow, but like, let's just forget that for a minute, right? And so now none of the game logic will be updating. None of this will be running. Instead, it's going to run the title logic. Similarly, if we're looking at the title screen, we don't want to draw the player. We don't want to draw the sand. We don't want to draw the player's health bar. We don't want any of that nonsense, right? We just want to draw the title screen. So we might create a function called title draw. Got to mark it as a function, F. And instead of pointing draw to our game draw function, we'll point it to our title draw function. And then we'll draw only the title screen. Things got a little bit tricky with our sort of level marquee thing though. So let's get update and draw back on here. And we'll sort of abbreviate this a little bit here. We'll just have underscore U and underscore D for our double underscores for our update and draw functions. So with the update function, when we initialize the game and the level first loads up, we want to do a couple of things. We need to have our level init update. I'll talk about the contents of this in a minute. And we also want to have our level init draw. Oh man. Level init D. And our level init fella is just going to draw the level 1 and the marquee. And what's kind of unique about this is that we also want it to draw the player and stuff too, right? So this is we'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. Now the question becomes like, how do we eventually go from our level init update functions to our game update, our game U, and our game D functions? Initially, we set update to always do the level init update stuff, and we set draw to always do the level init draw stuff. At the same time, though, we're also going to set a timer. I don't know how to draw a timer. Maybe a clock. Hold on. So when we set up our level init sort of looping parts, at the same time as we do that, we set a timer that's going to expire these things to point our function pointers to the main game stuff. And then we do the same thing whenever the player finishes a level and whenever a player dies. When a player finishes a level, we point update and draw back to our level init functions, and we set the timer. The timer goes off. That's when the actual game update loop starts. Now, one thing that was kind of cool that it's not kind of cool, it's kind of basic. One thing that I did was, because with the level marquee, we actually do want to draw the player and stuff. We don't want the game update logic because we don't want to read input. But we do want to draw the player and the sand and the health bar and all that stuff. So actually, when we get to level init D, you'll see that contained inside level init D is actually a call to game draw. So what it's doing is it's calling game draw to render the whole game thing to the screen. And then after that, it's overwriting the little level marquee with the level text on top of it in level init. So it's a bit of this one's a bit of a cheat, but a cool cheat, I think. So I think now we can sort of have a quick look at the code to see how this works out in Lua. So probably the most straightforward thing to look at is right here in our init function. Remember that this is going to how can I say this? This is going to be executed by Pico-8 once every time the cartridge is loaded, every time the game starts. And so in here, for our first values for the update and draw function pointers, we set them to level init update and level init draw. And that's what's going to do the little marquee logic. And just like I was saying, at the same time, I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to leave it for 2.8 seconds. I kind of like played around with it until I got a value I liked. So it's going to take 2.8 seconds. And after 2.8 seconds is gone, remember during that time, these two functions are updating, or being executed rather. After 2.8 seconds, then we reset our function pointers to the main game update and game draw functions. So that's when the game actually kicks off. The other thing I probably should point out here is I created a new global variable called last level init. And this is going to be set to the value of the current time every time we reinitialize the level. And the reason for that will become clear hopefully very shortly. But it's very similar to what we've been doing with timestamps before. Like we save this last timestamp thing every frame. This is a timestamp that's only going to be saved every time we initialize a level. I guess I probably could have used a TS here too, but c'est la vie. So here's the body of our level init update function. So the only thing that's going on when we're showing the level marquee is we're just checking the timestamp, setting the last TS to now, and we're handling some timers. That's it. Not much going on there. Because again, we don't want to read the player input, at least right now. We just want the timers to be checked so that we know when to switch from level init update to game update. And then next, if we look at level init draw, you can see in the comments, I made a note for myself. First, we're going to draw the game stuff, and then we're going to draw the level marquee on top of it. Because again, like every time you draw in Pico-8, whatever function calls you did first will be overwritten by whatever function calls you do second. So first, we just call our game draw function, and that's what's going to put the player and stuff on screen. Then we're going to check how much time has elapsed. So actually, I probably could have abridged some of this by using the values set in level init update, but whatever, this is what we got. We're going to check how much time has gone by since the last time we initialized a level. And that's what's going to control the timing of our little marquee and how long it's going to stay up there. So I'm setting this initial value to 74. You'll probably recognize that from when I was demonstrating the marquee before. This is going to be kind of the offset exposition of the text. So if less than 1 second has gone by since we initialized the level, then we'll use our ease out function to position the text. That's just going to slide it in from the left, just like that. So that's the first second, right? And we're just updating that X value. Then, if we're between 1 second and 2 seconds, this isn't explicitly called out, but you'll notice that there's no if clause here or else clause here for the value between 1 and 2. That's because it's just going to use the default, right? So in between 1 second and 2 seconds, that level 1 text is going to be drawn right in the middle of the screen. It's just going to sit there. We're not doing any easing. However, the next time we go through, if the amount of time elapsed is greater than 2 seconds, then we're going to do our ease in. That's just going to push it off the screen. So you'll notice 1 second, 2 seconds, gone, right? Off the screen like that. So we have different positioning logic depending on how much time has gone by since we started this whole level init nonsense. You'll also notice that the marquee kind of slides away like that. It's kind of a cheat. I hard-coded some values here, but if the elapsed time since the level init is greater than 2.5 seconds, then we just multiply the height of the rectangle by some factor, which I set to 2.5 over elapsed. That kind of gave me like decent enough timing and decent enough positioning that I'm pretty happy with how that looks. And that's all there is to it. So a couple of things I'm not sure about yet. One is I'm not sure if I want to block player input while I'm drawing that thing to the screen. You know what I mean? So I could probably or possibly get rid of level init update altogether and just use game update here. Right? And kind of just let the player walk while the level marquee is on the screen. Similarly, I'm not totally sure I want to do this every time the player dies. Although I guess, because it could be kind of annoying, right? If you just start and then, you die. And it's like, I know it's level 1, man. I was just here. Like maybe it's kind of a little too much info, but then again, maybe I will allow for player input to happen, just because then I don't have to worry about bombarding them with level marquees. Let me do that real quick and see if I like how that looks. Okay, yeah, so actually I like that way better. So I just totally got rid of the level init update part and I put the update function to game update right away. So this way we allow the player to just start walking as soon as the level starts. Similarly, when they die, I'll still display the level marquee, but you can just like walk. So yeah, that kind of rules. I think I'm going to keep it like that. So yeah, I guess I don't have anything else to change right now. Maybe the color scheme, maybe I'll add a drop shadow to that level text because drop shadows are always a great idea. But that's about it. Thanks all for joining me. I hope that was informative and or entertaining. Stay tuned for next week. There's even more coming. We're not done yet. This brawler is shaping up pretty well, but we've got a lot of stuff that I still want to add. I will catch you all next week, and until then, whatever you're building, whatever you're playing, I hope it's going well. You're having a grand old time, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.